So I have something I need to tell you. I moved away from Asheville, North Carolina, and I live in New York City now. For those of you who have followed my urbanist content out of Asheville over the course of the last year or so, this may seem sudden and possibly even reactionary based on what the last month has been like for Asheville. So I'm here to explain what happened and grow into the next chapter of this YouTube channel. But first, I need to acknowledge the tragedy of what happened when Hurricane Helene caused catastrophic flooding in Asheville and other mountain communities. I'm setting this video as a fundraiser for Beloved Asheville. They're a charity that was on the ground from day one, providing actual direct relief in Asheville. I've attached a fundraiser to this video. You can donate and funds will go directly to Beloved Asheville. I would just really encourage you, if you have any spare funds, please do make a donation. It is very needed. For the last year, I've been making videos about Asheville's land use and transportation policy.
My DSLR died. I should have planned ahead better.
I've kind of always had a fascination with this kind of thing. It's like a bit of a meme among my friends that if you glance over at my computer screen, I'm going to be scrolling through the timeline on Google Earth. And I found that this fascination of mine really sourced from a morbid curiosity about the destruction that's caused by major highway and freeway projects. Like many of you watching this probably also experienced, at some point YouTube started serving me urban planning content. I loved watching videos about engineering and transportation and land use. And eventually I fell into the urbanist perspective that the suburban experiment and its rampant negative consequences are neither necessary nor inevitable. This made me a somewhat insufferable person to be around during this time because I was wrestling with a question that I could not ignore and whose answer I could not understand. If this unpleasant, destructive, and deadly environment that pervades every corner of the country I've spent my entire life in was an unnecessary mistake, then how did it happen and why? When I say that this plagued me for months, I really mean it. Like, you couldn't be around me without me talking about and thinking about the only thing I could talk about or think about, which was how baffling I found the physical environment around me and how deeply I dreaded its mistakes. Not necessarily a super pleasant thing to be forced to talk about and think about constantly for people. Some people in my life also said that my passion and interest in this subject was worth sharing and that I might have an interesting or unique voice to bring to it. And I was skeptical of that, but I also badly, desperately needed an outlet to talk about this. So eventually I went and set up my camera in the median of Patton Avenue and let my frustration and anger out.
Nobody likes this. Everybody hates this.
During the next few months, I continued filming the video in bits and pieces as I had time, and after 5 months of work, I shared it to YouTube, really expecting nothing to happen. My perspective was that I wasn't really saying anything in that video that better YouTubers than I hadn't already said. But to my surprise, it got some traction, and it's still my most popular video to this day. Well, with the exception of the video that I made about how iOS 10's shuffle button was impossible to find, and also the vine that I made of the rubber chicken screaming while rolling off of the roof. Which will be the most far-reaching piece of content I will ever contribute to the internet, pretty much guaranteed. That first urbanism video very much felt like it was unleashing my frustrations and my questions onto the internet. But the thing is, at the time, I didn't really have a lot of answers. I didn't have any solutions to the problems I was talking about. And commenters pointed this out. I knew I had people's attention though. I knew I cared to change something, and I knew the best place to start would be in the community that I lived in, where I would have the most potential for an impact. Before I'd come to any of my conclusions about car dependency or the suburban experiment, I had kind of locked myself into a bit of a suburban car-dependent lifestyle. The thing is, I was living with 3 of my best friends. We were looking for a place that we could all live together, and we were all musicians, so having extra space for us to play music was also important. We also needed somewhere that was affordable, and so we ended up choosing to live in a single-family home with a basement that was just outside of city limits. The trade-off for affordability was that we were directly off of an interstate freeway exit onto a 5-lane road with no sidewalks and shopping malls galore. There were things that were great about it, but there were also things that really wore on me about it. I remember sitting on my front porch and hearing the sound of a high-speed car accident nearby, and knowing just how rare that ought to be and just how normalized it was in the place that I was living, I felt disgusted to live in such a scary place. Around the same time that I put out my first video about urbanism, I visited New York for fun with some friends. And during that trip, I realized that I felt compelled to try living a car-free or car-light life. I wanted to know what that was actually like because I have never done it before. And so I thought that might mean moving to a less suburban and more walkable part of Asheville. But the thing is, that meant moving out from my friend's place, and that also meant absorbing a much higher cost of rent. And I realized paying that same cost of rent makes more sense to do in a place that provides me greater value than Asheville truthfully could. So a couple of friends of mine that also wanted to move to New York City made the same goal. And we started saving and planning to move up here together in roughly a year, which is now. Seeing the success of my first video and having promised a follow-up about Strodes. No new Strodes. Period. I started working on the next video and spent the next several months making what is still my favorite video that I've ever made, the Strode video. And yeah, it was great. I started involving myself in local planning and zoning politics and making a hobby out of that by making short form content about current events and by showing up to city council and giving public comment.
Is this our zoning nerd of YouTube fame?
Yes, it is.
This is so exciting. Okay.
Hello.
Oh my goodness.
I'm the zoning nerd of YouTube fame. Yeah, so regarding this conditional rezoning, it was a great experience for me to get into the nitty-gritty minutia of how this policy stuff works. And then our goal of moving here in October of this year to New York started getting really close. And in early September, my roommates and I visited the city in order to secure housing. We found a place, returned back to Asheville in order to pack up our stuff and get ready to move. And then on the night of Thursday, September 26th, 2024, Hurricane Helene arrived, bringing with it catastrophic flooding that devastated much of Asheville and the surrounding mountain communities. And I was there when it happened, and I saw the flooding, and I saw some of the destruction. And I don't have a lot to say about it, truthfully, because I was fine. I made it to the other side, my people are okay, and so there were things that sucked about it. Not having access to water, food, my bank account, electricity, and especially information sucked. And also it made moving to New York from Asheville a lot more complicated. But ultimately, all of those things were just inconveniences compared to what could have happened and what did happen to so many people who lost everything. That's why this video is a fundraiser for Be Loved, who has been providing actual, real, direct aid to people where it is desperately needed in Asheville. There are people in Asheville who need help and who need us not to forget about them. So if you have any extra funds that you can donate, please, please donate some money to Be Loved. It is sorely, sorely needed. I haven't fully figured out what making these videos is going to look like for me in New York City, but I'm going to keep doing it. So I guess we'll find out. I want to thank those who support me on Patreon and make this possible. I have gone through and added bonus videos for September and October, which I was a little late on. So you can watch those now. I'm looking forward to what comes next. So I'll talk to you soon. Bye.